taga Visayas State University at magandang araw sa lahat ng mga colleagues, mga farmers at mga hog raisers natin in region Eastern Visayas and Central Visayas. And thank you Visayas State University for hosting our 20th Pinoy Pork Challenge Roadshow. When I was invited by my colleagues to speak on ASF epidemiology, I felt like it's too technical na mahirapan akong mag-connect sa mga estudyante at sa mga farmers natin, which I love from my work. And so I asked if I could share about more of an editorial story of how we got ASF and what its current impact in our swine industry is. I'm excited because after graduating from high school, I was supposed to, ang unang nagbigay sa akin ng scholarship to go to the vet med school is yung VISCA, which is the previous name of Visayas State University. And I was offered 100% scholarship, pero sabi ng tatay ko, sa hirap ng buhay namin noon, sabi niya, pag sa VISCA ka mag-aral, wala kang titirhan. Diba? Kasi kahit may scholarship ako dyan, unlike dun sa isang nag-offer sa akin ng scholarship, pwede ako makitira sa mga pinsan ko. And so I missed going to VISCA, but I love the campus. I've been to your campus, and so I can't miss sharing this story of ASF with you, and hopefully also giving you, inspiring you, and giving you advice. Because just as a start, kagabi I was watching Swine talks, and there was a Chinese speaker. He was a Chinese veterinarian, and he talked about what happened in China on ASF. And at the end of his presentation, of course, he talked about how devastating it was in China and how it currently impacts their swine industry is. And at the end of his presentation, he was asked by the moderator, Dr. Marcio Goncalves, and he was asked kung what is his biggest advice to other countries who are going through ASF right now. And he said one is to focus on biosecurity, and the other is to invest on good laboratory system. And it's the same vision I had 20 years ago. 20 years ago, nung ako ay estudyante, katulad din ninyo, there was another devastating, economically damaging pig outbreak in the world, and that was PRRS. I was a student then at the University of the Philippines, and you know, at that time it challenged our understanding and our attack of a virus outbreak. But my first advice to the students is, while 20 years ago, that was 20 years ago, that made me pursue graduate studies at the University of Minnesota, I would have the same advice as Dr. Limu of China, that while we will move on from every outbreak. I know it's devastating, and it must be truly sad for all the producers who have gone through population loss due to ASF. But just like other previous outbreaks, it might not be as devastating as ASF. But we have no choice but to move on, and we have to overcome. Life moves on, we overcome, but we should not forget the lessons of every outbreak and the lessons it brings to our industry. There's opportunity to every disaster, and unfortunately, we do not learn. Just like Dr. Limu said, biosecurity and laboratory system. When I was in the US, PRS has always challenged our ways of raising pigs, especially in the Philippines. PRS has told us that the value of biosecurity, in fact, the FPCSP biosecurity audit still was designed for PRS. But 20 years from now, a lot of us might not have taken it so seriously. we must have taken it lightly that we did not execute what PRS challenges brings into our system. And the other regret that I have is on not pursuing laboratory system. When I was doing my graduate studies in University of Minnesota, we were sending marked cells, the kidneys, monkey kidney cells, to grow passages of PRS virus. We used to send it to Thailand, to my professors, students, previous students in Thailand, and they would always ask me, "Oh, Eugene, why are you not gonna link with the Philippines and send also monkey kidney cells?" But at that time, I was so young, I didn't know what our capacities are in our laboratory, and now that we went through another outbreak like ASF, we realized again to not undermine biosecurity, which will be discussed by our colleagues after me, and also the value of really the gold standard of a virus viral diagnosis is really growing the virus, and that's through cell lines. That's the best way to really understand an initial outbreak. And that's the lesson I learned. No, while we move on, do not forget the learning. So while as students now of Visayas State University, it's the best opportunity to learn. Learn the virus and the way you analyze things. Which brings me to the next advice I'd like to give you as students. One is there are learnings in every outbreak. It's the right time to learn. The second is, nung ako nag-aaral, parang di ba meron tayong style na pag nag-aaral tayo, para lang maging pumasa, di ba? Or we study to get good grades and not study to understand. Again, coming from the Swine talks last night, they were talking about critical thinking and concepts instead of being boxed in ideas. It's important that our brains, and the best time to cultivate that are now as students. You know, when we study, let us think of out of the box, you know. Nung ako yung nag-aaral, ang panahon namin noon, 1990s, di ba? Late 1990s, 2000 ako graduate, ha. Late 1990s, ang mga problema namin noon sa viruses ay had cholera, parvovirus, FMD, and there was pseudorabies. All of those, there were parang perfect viruses, you know. You find their epidemiological antigenic proteins. You used also their the proteins to use for vaccine production, and then when they infect, after 12 days they develop antibody, and then they recover. They seem to be perfect viruses. And so when PRS arrived in the late 1991, it challenges all our understanding of the box viruses. Suddenly, nagkaroon na ng concept ng subpopulation. Diba? In a group of 10 pigs na i-infect mo, merong mga super shedders at merong mga hindi mai-infect. Magkatabi lang yan sila. You start to question dynamics. And so dati kapag ka aaral kami ng immunology, minimorize ko lang yan. Diba? Yung mga B cells, T cells, anong movement niyan. And then suddenly these T cells and B cells do not move the way they reacted, and they help clear out the other old viruses. Suddenly may mga, diba, like you learn from ASF virus, suddenly may mga hindi na nakaka-acknowledge nung virus within the immune system. And so it's good to when we study, we parang kwento tayo ng pelikula, ng movie, na yung mga kalaban ay hindi lang, yung mga kontrabida ay hindi lang madaling kontrabida, yung mga kalaban ay mahirap patayin. And that makes study, I think, more exciting when we really attack information to understand and not information to just regurgitate and tell the same information. That's critical thinking. So kung meron kayong adjustment sa inyong ways of thinking, be critical, and then develop concepts, ask questions, and then discuss it amongst yourselves. Kasi dyan nagsimula ang population medicine eh. Kasi before that, pag nagkasakit yung mga baboy, sabay-sabay magkakasakit, sabay-sabay magkaka-recover. But then again, new diseases, including PRRS, has developed a lot of mutations. They have developed a lot of subtypes and genotypes. And most definitely, nag-iiba yung dynamics nila as they move into the population. So be excited for new attacks to learning. And the last before I go to my talk is I just can't miss this chance to influence your young minds is sometimes siguro kayo ngayon, marami sa inyo veterinary students, marami naman sa inyo animal science students or probably animal nutrition students. And probably you say, hindi naman ako mag-aalaga hindi man ako pupursue ng swine medicine. Hindi naman ako, in fact, hindi ko pa sure kung anong gagawin ko sa buhay ko after graduation. That's pretty normal. That's, even 85-year-olds don't know what to do with their lives. And that's part of, I think when you have a lot of skills, when you are smart, you can offer a lot of things into the world. And so you are not sure kung anong pupuntahan mong practice after graduation. Again, that's okay. Because I remember, again, kaya siguro hindi ko masyadong iniintindi yung mga viruses ng baboy o di kaya ng immunology ng sakit ng baboy, ay hindi ko pinangarap na maging swine veterinarian. I remember all my life, I really wanted to become a medical doctor. And so nung wala akong pampaaral sa medisina, ang nagpaaral sa akin, dinala ako sa veterinary medicine. The next closest is small animal practice, no? Maging pet doctor. And so all my life, I've always, ang aking specialization ay nasa small animal practice, particularly dog medicine. Pero, hindi mo alam nung naghanap ako ng thesis, ang nag-offer sa akin ay poultry. So I was studying toxicity of furazolidone in poultry. But then nung graduate na ako, cum laude pa akong graduate niyan, wala naman akong puntang trabaho. At that time, buti kayo ngayon, pinag-aagawan ng mga veterinaryo ngayon. But at that time, wala akong puntang trabaho. And the only opportunity at that time for me was as an invitation from San Miguel Pure Foods to work as a swine veterinarian. And so doon, nagbabago-bago ang nangyayari sa buhay natin. So, if you are not sure with what to do, it's the best time to learn ASF because who knows, you might become a swine veterinarian. And if you don't become a swine veterinarian, every issue in the world, including in swine, is a food security issue, is a food safety issue, and it's an economic issue, just like the story of ASF and its impact on our swine industry. All right, so that's hopefully will change you. Baka petiks lang kayo when you watch my video. Hopefully that will encourage you to go with me and understand the story of ASF. And sa mga farmers natin, it's not it's an encouragement to understand this pig infection. So when we fully understand it, alam natin kung paano natin maiiwasan itong pumasok. My colleagues would say, let's focus on Visayas because it's the last bastion of our pig industry in the Philippines against ASF. And so we hope that you understand the story and work together hand in hand, bayanihan tayo na huwag ito makapasok dyan sa Visayas. So I'll share my screen. All right. New normal. All right. So I'm going to tell to you an editorial story of ASF. Hopefully, as students, you will learn, and as farmers, you will understand as its dynamics in our pig population. So basically, ASF is an old infection in pigs. It started in Africa. That's why it's called African swine fever. In early 1900s, ang tagal na nito. In fact, documents would say as early as 1909, it has already been documented in sub-Saharan population, wild pigs in sub-Saharan Africa. But it's not until 1930s when it was fully characterized to infect only pig cells, only pig population, but there's another mechanical vector, which are the soft ticks, the arthropod vectors, ornithodorus ticks. No? They are mechanical vectors, they don't get infected, but they transmit and shed the virus. But the only living organism, the living animals infected by this virus are pigs. Okay? So, yung mga nag-worry na makakahawa ba ito sa tao, since early 1900s, wala pang documented na it has receptors in human cells. And so, again, it's fully documented only to infect pig animals. Okay? So basically, 1900s, in 1960s, it has been documented to infect the pigs in Europe. Maraming kwento kung bakit ito dumating sa Europe, particularly in Spain and in Portugal. And so in Spain and Portugal, in Europe, it took them 3 decades, 30 years to eliminate it, aggressive depopulation in Europe. And they succeeded to eradicate it, except in an island in Italy. But more importantly, in 1990s, nawala ito in Europe. But unfortunately, in 2007, it re-emerged in Europe, particularly in Georgia, and started to infect going towards Eastern Europe. But 1990s, hindi pa ito inisip eh. When did we become alarmed? As we said, kapag ang China ay nagkabahing, ang lahat ng mundo ay nagkakalagnat o nagkakasakit. In March of 2018, an FAO documents reported its threat in the China population, and we know our relationship, our trade and importation, export business with China. And so in March of 2018, it was documented in the borders of Siberia na merong outbreak, dumating na yung outbreak. You have to understand that Europe is connected, no? Eastern Europe going into Russia, and then baba niyan is China. And so the threat becomes suddenly real, because when they reported that it's only around 300 kilometers off the China border, ako pag tumama yan na China, and it actually happened in August of 2018. Okay, learning from the outbreaks that started in northeast part of China, similar yung kwento ng China, and you know these are materials of our ASF awareness before pa dumating sa Pilipinas ang ASF. And so, parang deja vu, di ba, na sinasabi na in China, hindi sila nakikinig. In fact, kagabi, Dr. Limo said, nung pumutok kasi sa northeast and middle parts of China, provinces yung ASF, the southern farms, they said, malayo, maganda naman yung biosecurity namin, hindi kami tatamaan yan. Okay, so we have to learn from them. And their stories is that 46% of their outbreaks or spread of the virus is due to workers and vehicles. Okay, the vehicles at yung mga trabahante na nagsarado na yung mga farms in northeast, nagsiuwian sa mga probinsya down south, or yung mga trucks na nagdala ng mga baboy na hindi na alam na tinamaan na pala ng ASF ay binenta in southern part or nagpa-test in southern regions, no, ng mga dugo because they don't know, and that caused the fireworks of outbreak in China. Of course, 34% of that comes from swill feeding, yung nagpapakain ng kaning baboy, the swill, pasaw or lamaw, and another 20% of that is really the biyahero ng mga baboy na nagdadala ng they are mechanical carriers, especially if their trucks have blood of infected pigs. And so they're a big component of the outbreak in China. And we should have learned. Diba? Kasi siniseminar ko to as early as March of 2019. Tinamaan tayo in August of 2019. We already told you about these dynamics in China. What is exciting or what is relevant in China is really the awareness, because you see the threat comes from the borders. So dapat yung number 11, yung province na yan near the border of Mongolia and Siberia, yan dapat yung unang tamaan. But ang unang nag-report ng outbreak in China ay yung Liaoning province, yung sa Shenyang City in August. Okay? So kung August yan, ang bilis, if you could see the sequence here, parang fireworks. Since August, the whole month of August, sabay-sabay halos nagpuputukan yan in northeast part and in the middle provinces of China. But nung September lang, nag-report yung pinaka-northeast part, yung pinaka-northern part, which is that number 11, characterization of the virus that they've isolated here, they realized na, yung number 11 pala ay similar lang dun sa mga naunang outbreaks. And if you look at the timelines, the age timelines of the virus, mukhang nauna pa pala talagang tinamaan itong northeast part na to. And so ito na yung sinasabi nila na it could have happened earlier than August. And so kung earlier than August, maybe April or May, and if the awareness has been maximum and biosecurity and border controls have been executed, baka hindi ganon kagrabe yung cases ng mortalities in China. And so the same message I'm going to share to you today. Awareness is very, very important. We have to understand how it spreads, ano yung dynamics ng transmission, and then paano siya nakaka-infect, which we will discuss later. The second impact we have to learn and we have to anticipate is its impact on the population loss, which greatly impacts supply of pork and the prices of pork. Both are integral in our swine industry economics. In September of 2018, this was a presentation by Dr. Stephen McOrist from the USDA Foreign Agricultural Service. He presented this at the World Trade's scenario presentation because, again, Stephen McOrist, we know him as a swine consultant who has been a frequent visitor in the Philippines. But by then, he worked with USDA, and so he talked about the impact of these projected mortalities and population loss in our global supply. Basing on what happened in China in the last 3 months, no? So August, September, and yun nga, yung hypothesis na earlier pa itong nangyayari in China, he estimated that the population loss, the maximum opportunity of mortality and infection of ASF, it will kill 80% of the small scale pig farms, no? Yung tinatawag yung backyard, and 30% in large farms. Ito yung kanyang threat, no? Which we'll discuss later because the biological, the antigenic, and the epidemiological threat of the virus is ganito ka-devastating. And so if you look at China, in September, wala pang nangyayari yan in Vietnam, wala pang outbreak niyan in Cambodia and in the Philippines. If you look at that, the projection is, while China produces 54 metric tons of pork. That's 54 billion kilos of pork. They consume more. That's why they export pigs, no? But because of the ASF outbreak, they will lose more than half of pork in their population. 31 metric tons of pork ang mawala because of the projected loss. And so they expect a 24 billion kilos of shortfall pag tuloy-tuloy na nangyayari ito. And a lot of our population epidemiologists also projected the same for Vietnam, for Cambodia, and for the Philippines. Okay? So anong impact noon? Okay? The impact there is, with China alone, China will need 24 billion kilos of pork. And if the usual production and the export countries only produce as much, okay? So if you look at this graph, even if all of European pork and USA pork and Brazil and Canada and all the other exporters, all of this pork will go to China, ang kaya lang mabigay ng mga countries na to is up to 8 billion kilos of pork. So, kailangan ng China alone 24.5 billion kilos of pork. As early as September of 2018, we already saw a deficit of 16.5 billion kilos of pork China alone. Hindi pa naglalaro dyan yung mga laws in Vietnam and other countries na kumukuha din in these exporting countries. And so it was before ASF became a animal health and case of outbreak story. It first and foremost is a pork supply and a pork food safety issue, and it's a global economical issue. Now let's go to the Philippines. This has been presented before ASF broke into the Philippines. We made sure we did a lot of awareness campaigns para hindi pumasok sa Pilipinas ito. And I want that same spirit in Visayas now, that you will do all the efforts to control your borders because ito yung threat ng ASF. If they say that in China, the threat is 80% mortality in backyard and 30% mortality in the commercial farms, in the Philippines, as of 2019, we had a population of 12.7 million pigs. Of that 12.7 million pigs, 8 million is in the backyard and 4.7 million is in large farms. And kung 30% of that ay mawawala, this is a projected loss pag wala tayong gagawing control programs. Kaya because of this threat, nagtutulungan tayo. The multi-sectoral programs has been ongoing since December of 2018 hanggang nag-2019. Before pumasok to, grabe yung campaign program natin because we don't want to lose 7.8 million population of pigs. Lalong-lalo na, majority of that will be coming from the backyard, which is the backbone of our swine industry economy. But unfortunately, no matter how we held hands together and joined together, history has told us that pumasok yung ASF in late July and early August of last year, that's 2019. And it was perfectly the same story as of China. It was very infectious. It was very, it was indeed hemorrhagic. It was characterized by very high fever. Maraming magsisimula in the loss of appetite. A lot of those in highly acute cases really has hemorrhagic septicemia or the reddening of the skin. And marami nagsasabi the incubation period was so fast. The earliest documented is 4 hours. Some of them naman took a while. No? Some of them took more than 20 days bago yung iba ay nahanawaan. But some of them says in 2 to 10 days, nagsisimula ng mamamatay yung mga baboy nila from the point of the initial clinical signs. In many farms, especially dun sa mga maliliit lang, mortality can go as high as 100%. It takes a while sa population, bigger population, which we will discuss later. And we need to understand why. As students, as farmers, dapat maintindihan natin kung bakit ganito ka-devastating, bakit ganito ka-economically damaging ang ASF. In the Philippines, we actually reflect the same fundamentals, management, and production systems as China. While hindi ganun kalaki ang small-scale population in China, they also have small-scale population. Mas malaki nga lang yung kanilang medium farms, but they said 25 to 30% of their population comes from the backyard. So parang ganun din sa Pilipinas. And so hindi ganun ka-aware at ka-strong ang biosecurity protocols. Biologically, yun yung weakness na hinahanap ng African swine fever. Because the African swine fever, as you can see here, it's a very big DNA arbovirus. Again, it replicates in the endothelial cells, particularly of the RBC. And so we all know that an arbovirus, pinakamatagal ma-desiccate ang virus niya. Okay? That's why later on we'll say it's a very sturdy virus because it's an arbovirus. It thrives in the blood. But more critically, it replicates in every cytoplasm of every pig cell. Yung ibang viruses kasi like PRRS, it just grows in the macrophages and also in the endothelial cells of the reproductive tract. That's why pneumonia and abortion yung clinical signs. But for African swine fever, it thrives in every cytoplasm of every endothelial cells. Ano ba naman ang cell ng baboy ang walang cytoplasm? So it replicates in almost every cell of all the parts of the pigs. Okay? And ang pinakawais nito, para tong drug lord, para simple understanding, para itong drug lord, no? Yung ibang mga viruses tinutulungan lang para makapasok sa katawan ng baboy, para maiwasan ang immune system at para makalabas mga 5 proteins lang, no? 5 cell proteins lang tumutulong sa kanila, but this virus encodes 165 na mga ano bang tawag nito, collateral, mga kakampi, di ba? Mga kasabwat, di ba? So because of it encodes 165 proteins, ang bilis niya makapasok. That's why the incubation period is very, very fast, because tinutulungan siya makapasok itong mga proteins na to. And this helps inhibits immune responses. Okay? And while it also helps na hindi mapatay ng ating immune cells, tinutulungan ito makalabas. And so it's a shedder. It's a shedder of a virus. And because it's an arbovirus, again, it is in the blood, it is very, very resilient, a virus. You know, every arbovirus is characterized to be very, very resilient. Okay? Antigenically, ito pang nagpapalala. Okay? It has 23 different genotypes. While we have characterized our Philippine isolate to be of genotype 2, similar to the Chinese strain, it has a lot of similarity even to the Georgian strain. Antigenically kasi, kapag ang virus na to ay very lethal, ang bilis pumatay, di ba? Di pa nakaka-develop nga ng antibody yung baboy ay namatay na. So it's very difficult to assess kasi nga ang bilis. And then when you grow the virus that you characterized is highly, if you look at the other slide, the upper picture, if you study the P72 and the P220, every isolate is, or every genotype is only 25% similar to each other. Okay? So you do not get a respectable cross protection. Parang nangyayari nun sa ating PRRS, di ba? So you see, ito yung mga kailangang aralin natin when we study immunology as students. No? We think out of the box. We do critical thinking. Na And then the other problem is immunologically, okay? Again, mahirap hanapin, makarakterize yung immunological properties or immunological protein that will give cross protection across different genotypes. And i-add mo pa yung dynamics nito in the population, okay? One, because again, it's an arbovirus, it's the last to be desiccated amongst all the cells ng organs ng baboy. It is very resilient. Okay, it can only be killed if you cook it more than 30 minutes at a temperature that's higher than 70 degrees centigrade. And so if you freeze it, may mga studies pa ongoing ngayon na it survives indefinitely at frozen state. In whole meat ground, no, halimbawa yung parts na patay na baboy, pag nandyan lang yan sa room temperature or sa lupa in your farms, it can survive up to 105 days. So if the infected blood is in your farm, it can survive up to 105 days. No, it can survive salting, drying, as long as it's not beyond 70 degrees centigrade for 30 minutes. Chilling will survive for 110 days. So all this you can see, and not only in scientific journals, but even from FAO documents, ganun din yung studies nila. 105 days to survive. There are documents that pag nandyan yan sa fecal matter ng baboy at room temperature can survive 11 to 13 days. Okay? So all the more pag may blood yan in the tracts. na pagdadala ng biyahero, at mahawakan ng mga, madala ng mga baboy, mahawakan ng mga tao sa mga tsinelas natin, sa mga sapatos natin, then it's a potent form of transmission. Okay? Another challenge that we are trying to understand ASF, kung yung PRRS noon ay naintindihan natin yung concept ng subpopulation, again, super shedding. Another thing that we need to understand, that the gaps in research of ASF, it's its contagiosity. Okay? Again, it is very, very pathogenic. Lagi natin sinasabi, paano nakapasok yan sa babuyan natin? Paano yan lumusot with good biosecurity? Of course, wala namang aamin na yung tao nila ay lumalabas paggabi, di ba? Wala namang umaamin na yung truck nung isang farm manager ay nakalapit pala sa babuyan natin, okay? Or wala naman ding aamin na weak yung ating biosecurity program, okay? So ang bilis niya makapasok, which we will discuss further, pero ang bagal niya, pag nakapasok na sa babuyan natin, ang bagal niyang makahawa sa iba. That's why there are forms now of control programs like CAL, test and CAL, yung ating tooth extraction, which probably will be presented by our other speakers. But you can fully understand this. Well, it's very, very pathogenic. It's very, very lethal. Ang bagal niyang gumalaw. Kaya ang ginagawa ngayon, kapag tinest mo at negative yung iba, baka pwede mo pa siyang makinabangan at mabenta as long as they're negative. But it's also not practical to keep your farm na yung halimbawa yung ibang mga baboy na akala mo di pa tinamaan, ay di ko na pa-test yan, wala namang signs eh. Because again, it is very, very pathogenic. Sooner or later, gaya ng kwento ng marami, aabutan din yung ibang mga baboy, no? Especially pag wala kang ginawang drastic programs of biosecurity in your farm operation. Kasi while mabagal siya, don't forget that it is very, very lethal and it's very, very pathogenic. Aabutan ka din. There's just something in this baboy, in this population component of the virus na mabagal ang kanyang contagiosity. Also, there are things to understand, again, gaps in research in terms of transmission and also the understanding of threshold density concept. It takes 10,000 viruses to infect the virus. So kaya maraming mga studies na kapag kami wall yung mga babuyan ay hindi madali maka-infect sa kabilang pens, no? As long as there's a wall. That's part of its low contagiosity but very, very high tenacity and very, very high lethality. Sooner or later, because it is very tenacious within the operations, no, nabubuhay siya matagal in the system, it becomes a constant threat dun sa hindi pa tinamaan in the long run. Okay? It does not fade out easily. And the other dynamics is, kapag ka napunta siya sa tubig, no, the threshold is far, far lower. In fact, even 100 virus particles only in water, as long as mainom siya ng baboy, it doesn't require 10,000 virus. Just a low threshold 100 viruses, it can start infecting the pigs. And so that's a threat in our system of piggery in the Philippines na magkakalapit. Ang ating water sources ay interconnected, and especially yung mga paglilibing natin ay hindi tayo wala tayong protection, hindi siya pupunta, yung virus ay hindi pupunta sa water sources, no, sa baseline ng ating water sources. So that's another thing that we need to take in mind when we want to protect our farms from getting infected with the ASF virus. And so now, as Dr. Sarah Blom reminded, that up to now, it's still a pig-to-pig contact is the major form of transmission. Of course, the vectors of vehicles and fomites is a threat, as I've discussed earlier, because if the blood and other live cells, feces can have a lot of intestinal cells, again, alive for 11 days. If that is carried through viajeros and transmitters like other animals, no? We were thinking, though there are still not full studies of it, but we're thinking of pests like mice and rats as a threat, other animals as a threat, and of course, human vectors, yung ating mga tsinelas at mga sapatos, that plays a component in pig transmission, and that was a problem in the Philippines, where it started in Rodriguez Rizal. Because while we looked at all those opportunities, nakalimutan natin na there are areas, the likelihood of hotel and restaurant scraps, yung mga trimmings ng mga hotels and restaurants are being sold commercially in an area like Rodriguez Rizal na pinapakain ito, binibenta, tinitrade pa nga ito, at pinapakain sa mga backyard na pigs. And so the first reported case in the Philippines came from that likelihood of infection. And unfortunately, we know the story, yung mga vehero na bumili nitong mga baboy na to in Rodriguez Rizal, kasi nga pinagbibenta ng mura nung nagsimula ng mamamatay. Of course, at the time, hindi pa natin na-confirm na that was ASF. Then umabot yan in our farms in Bulacan. And that becomes all another different story, because Bulacan, Rizal, and the nearby provinces of Pampanga are ASF initial zones, and they are high pig density zones. They are areas with more than 50% commercial pigs. Okay, and again, this was an interplay, because our initial funds to support control is only enough for the backyard population. Wala tayong financial support for commercial farms. And so another social challenge of how do we ensure that commercial farms sumusunod sila doon sa ating guideline na wag ilabas, wag ibenta, baka naman kahit knowingly pa, no? Pag suspect pa lang, to follow na kailangan sa protocol natin na kailangan nating ilibing, turn over sa ating mga LGUs, sa ating mga veterinarians. The compliance was a challenge. Okay, so you could see in the slide all those dark areas, dark zones of red, yun yung mas maraming baboy, and unfortunately, yun yung central na area nung unang tinamaan ng ASF. And so, initially, ang pag-control was already a big challenge. Here is a report from an interagency and inter-industry report gathered during the previous ASF Repopulation and Recovery Summit sa MOA noong February. And isa sa mga na-discuss na reasons kung bakit nag-fail yung ASF control is number one, yung implementation program challenges with the local government policies. Okay? Kung ikaw ba naman si local government plan, parang hirap din namang mag-control kapag sabihin man natin matigas ang ulo ng mga farmers, pero kung wala tayong pambayad, it's a challenge. Okay? Concern over lack of government transparency, again, hindi talaga mag-declare, nahirapang mag-declare. Kahit paano natin i-consiensya sila that there's a very big risk, hindi tayo nakapag-create ng value for them to report. Okay? Also, again, that was due to lack of government funding and then resources, including the testing. Okay? Of course, yung iba, they presume na mabibenta ko pa to kasi hindi pa naman sure na tinamaan. Kasi nga, the testing is also very, very limiting. Napakalayo, napakamahal, and ang hirap i-execute, no, nung testing. Lack of incentives for voluntary reporting is another issue that was raised. Again, control over infected meat movement, the quarantine execution, while there are a lot of quarantines, but again, kung maraming pasaway, mahirap talagang makontrol. Maraming kwento na tinatago sa ilalim ng mga trucks, tinatago sa loob ng mga vans, mga kotse, and that was a problem. Media was another challenge to control the media. And of course, when there's a big scare on national news, ang impact niyan ay magbebentahan lahat. As we've experienced, magbebentahan lahat in the areas, and that puts prices all too low and further creating more fear and more panic. Of course, there was an issue of protection versus protectionism in many government programs in their border control policies. So what happened next was tuloy-tuloy na kumalat across North Luzon. If you could see this report coming from the last week of July, yan yung unang report in Rodriguez Rizal, and then nagsisimula na mag-report in August. Then in September, yun yung mga population loss ng mga breeders na i-report na yan to us, that number of 30,000 pigs. And then tuloy-tuloy yan hanggang nag-December, nag-January. In February, well, in October pala, na-report na rin yan in Cavite. From North Luzon, lumipat yan in October of 2019 in Cavite. But then, medyo mabagal yung spread in South Luzon. Umabot yan from Cavite, napunta yung Quezon province, some in Batangas, but controlled. Unlike in North Luzon na talagang tuloy-tuloy yung pagkalat within Bulacan to Pampanga, and then Bataan to Nueva Ecija, Tarlac, okay? So a lot of reported population loss really came from the blue regions, which is North Luzon. In February of this year, 2020, unang na-report yan na nag-jump sa Mindanao, okay, in Davao del Sur. And if you could see here, bandang March was the last of this year when we started to lock down community quarantine because of COVID-19. So probably while COVID-19 is another devastating pandemic, nakatulong din to para wag masyadong kumalat at mapigilan yung pagkalat ng ASF sa buong Pilipinas. No? If you could see here in the report, the movement restrictions brought by the community lockdowns resulted in limited accessibility, and so nag-slow down yung spread. So we go back to this slide here. In May and June, halos wala nang na-report na pig mortality all across, even in North Luzon. No? Baka hindi lang na-report kasi nga naka-lockdown, but suddenly because wala nakakalabas na mga sasakyan, walang mga tao nakakalabas, it helped. Remember, in February of 2020, during the summit, we already forecasted na from 21% ng mortality in February of this year, aabot ito sa almost more than 40 to 50% ang nawawala. No? Again, that was a projection because of how ganun kabilis siyang kumalat in North Luzon at nakahawa in South Luzon. But hindi yun nangyari. It was something that we need to thank for from the lockdowns because hindi yun nangyayari. But even before the lockdowns, we already saw that talagang babagsak yung presyo ng baboy. And because tuloy-tuloy yung pagkakatama, we see that bandang September, even July, September, October, magkukulang yung baboy in the Philippines nationwide. And yung presyo ay aabot, it was a projection as in January, February of this year, ha? Hindi pa to nangyayari, but we saw that tataas ang presyo ng karne ng baboy. You see here, the projection natin is bandang September, November, ay aabot ito ng 125. Pero tinan mo ngayon, di ba? Nasa 195 na tayo. And so we, in earlier of this year, we fell short of our expectation. Mas mahal pa pala talaga ang magiging bilihan ng baboy, and that speaks of the supply. Here, we projected that bandang November, December, we will have a negative 20% loss or in supply of pork brought about by ASF threat in the Philippines. Okay, so we continue to track this. Tulong-tulong ang lahat ng mga industriya. That includes the members of the hog federations, ProPork and the National Federation of Hog Farmers, a lot of the private sectors, yung mga nagbibenta ng bakuna, particularly yung hog cholera, kasi parang yun yung barometer mo kung meron pa bang babuyan yung mga commercial farms? Kasi pag nagsoli na yan bakuna o hindi na gumagamit ng hog cholera vaccines yan, chances are wala ng baboy dyan. Okay? A lot of data also comes from other members of PVDA, yung mga drug companies. And then also, this is in collaboration with the Bureau of Animal Industry and the NMIS, headed by our 2 directors. And also, they helped us gather data from LGUs, okay, because they have collaboration with LGUs, provincial and city veterinarians, municipal veterinarians. And so, we continue to track the population loss, again, because this is impact in the economy, in the pork supply, and in the prices of pork. So we continue to track the data. Nung pumutok ito sa Pilipinas in August of last year, nauna pa ang Vietnam sa atin. No? Vietnam has a more population. They have 28.15 million heads of pigs, but nauna na sila by February of 2019. Tayo, August pa lang tayo nagsimula mag-report ng mortalities natin. But when ang Vietnam ay nagsimulang nung ang Pilipinas ay nag-report, ang Vietnam already has a reported 6 to 9 million pig loss, pig mortalities in Vietnam. That's probably due to also infection, and also because they depopulated as an initiative out of fear. So again, hindi lang naman to nangyayari sa atin sa Pilipinas. It has happened in Vietnam, it has happened in Cambodia, tinamaan nila na una pa sa atin in June of 2019. And so it's something that we expected, but how we recover and how we analyze and how we control is more essential. So by understanding the population loss, we could track its impact in the industry. And so this is as of July 14 na to, because I wanted to report the official document from the government, while some of us from the ASF crisis management technical team are continually monitoring this up to now. We have our own individual data, but this is the last public data reported by the Bureau of Animal Industries, NACADSE, and even sa industry meetings like PICAF. No, so I'm sharing this with you now because this is the official data. So again, this is as of July 14. I will give our opinions on anong tracking ito ngayon. But again, this is a combination of those who are downsizing out of fear, yung mga natakot na lang kaya depopulate lang ng mga babuyan nila, and including also those who are directly infected and have depopulated their pigs, and those who are part of the depopulation program of the government, nung zoning program ng Bureau. So we try to gather all the data coming from all the sectors, from the farmers, integrated groups, again, the technical team, and ito yung nakuha nating data, okay? Our reference, of course, as always, is the PSA, yung ating Philippine Statistics Authority. And if you can see, in 2019, PSA data is 12.7 million. Okay, so out of the 12.7 million of pigs in the Philippines, 6.5 million or 51% is in Luzon, and 6.2 million or 49% is in Visayas and Mindanao. Okay, mayroong 2.6 million ang Visayas at 3.6 million ang Mindanao. But when we started gathering the data, okay, may mga pangalan ng mga farms, may mga population, ginather natin lahat, na-realize natin na hindi nagtutugma yung data, no? So, halimbawa, dito lang sa per provinces tayo, okay? Para klaro, meron itong backyard population loss, tapos meron din commercial population loss, okay? Kasi yung commercial population loss, nanggagaling yun sa estimate ng mga vaccine companies at ng mga farm groups. And then the backyard naman estimates comes from LGUs and from the Bureau. So si Bataan alone, sinasabi ni Bataan na according to PSA, they only have a population of 13.9 thousand pigs, okay? Breeders in Bataan. But you can see, sa report nila, in commercial, in backyard, they have 77,400. Pero yung na-report ng estimate ay 7,500 lang namatay. Okay? So, mas maraming namatay kaysa number ng breeders in Bataan. And ganun din sa commercial. And mas reliable tong commercial kasi may mga mukha talaga to. Ang nasa data ng PSA, nasa 6,500 lang yung breeder population ng commercial farms in Bataan. But ang data, already 13,000 ang nawala na population, breeder population in Bataan. So, hindi nagtutugma. Ganon din sa, for example, Bulacan. No? Sa Bulacan, in PSA, they only have, the data says 18,000 lang yung breeders in Bulacan. But in the data, 27,800 na yung nawalang breeder population in Bulacan. So, ang una natin ginawa is, inayos mo natin yung population, yung data, in-adjust natin. And so the adjusted data will have this report, okay? That from 12.7 million, there are already 14.7 million pala ang baboy sa Pilipinas. 8.5 million of that is in Luzon, that's around 58%. Visayas has 2.6 million or around 18%, and Mindanao has 3.6 million or around 25%. Okay? So, yun yung bagong adjusted na data natin. And then, ipasok natin yung mga estimate natin na walang mga baboy coming from integrated sources, makikita natin yung latag na in North Luzon, South Luzon, this is probably a better presentation. In Bataan alone, ayan, kita mo, out of the 20,000 breeder population in Bataan, 91% na ang nawala. In Bulacan, out of 190,000 sow level in Bataan, 69% na ang nawala. Nandyan din yung data ng backyard at yung data ng commercial farms. In Nueva Ecija, it says 70% na ang nawala. In Pangasinan, at that time, as of July 14, 50% ang nawala. I'm sure medyo nanadagan pa ito ngayon. In Tarlac, 60% ang nawala. Okay? So if we come with projection ng losses, talagang nagtutugma naman dun sa monthly na report ng pagkakawala. Okay? So basically, consistent na North Luzon yung nawawala ng baboy. Then, out of July 14, konti lang yung nawala. The yellow graph is in Visayas, is in South Luzon. Okay? So sa summary, as of July 14, ito na ngayon yung na-report ng team natin. Again, it's a collaboration of industry players, private sectors, farm practitioners and farm producers, and of course, our agencies. Na as of July 14, total Philippines na wala is nasa 25%. Okay? Out of 14.7 million pigs in the Philippines, around 3.7 million na ang nawala. Again, these are not all infected with ASF. Majority of this has been due to fear and has been voluntarily culled. No? It's called the depopulation, downsized depopulation. Of this, 25%, almost 40% is from Luzon. Nasa 60% ang nawawala in North Luzon. And as of July 14, nasa 7% or 6.3% pa lang at that time ang nawala in South Luzon. And we all know that starting August, talagang nasa South Luzon yung sentro ng outbreaks. Okay? A lot of them are in Quezon Province and also in Bicol Region, Camarines Sur. And so it's not official, but we've been tracking it together with our colleagues from the crisis management team, technical team. We've tracked it na ito ay nasa mga 25% na as of now. Of course, it's unofficial, but we've continued to monitor its spread in a lot of towns in Bicol, and in Quezon Province, and even in Cavite and in Batangas in the last month. So we've tracked it to have grown to around 25%, the least. Okay, but we still have to gather as an industry and together with the Bureau to update our official release of population loss. The Visayas depopulation, we pegged at 5%. Of course, that's a shared opinion by also our farmers and producers in the Visayas na though wala pang outbreak and hopefully we keep na dyan sa Eastern, Central, and Western Visayas, we keep it ASF free, but meron ding mga natakot at nag-depopulate. And partly lalo pa dahil nagkaroon ng COVID-19 at humina yung bilihan ng baboy, ng demand ng baboy, marami din talagang nag-depopulate. And so we pegged it at 5%. Maraming nagda-downsize. Okay? And hopefully as we recover from COVID-19 and the demand from the restaurants and hotels comes back again, the prices of live weight now can encourage our Visayas farms to be our source of pig in the next few months or in the next year. In Mindanao, the 5%, especially North Mindanao, again, is like Visayas, just downsized from the fear and from the low demand of pigs due to the COVID-19 lockdowns. But as of July 14, those reportedly infected and depopulated in the South Mindanao region is pegged at 0.5%. Medyo tumaas na yung konti siguro ngayon, but not much because maganda naman ang control programs na ginawa ng ating Mindanao region. So in short, as of July 14, again, nasa 25%. Again, mataas na yan ngayon kasi nga nadagdagan na yung sa South Luzon and medyo tuloy-tuloy din yung outbreaks in the northeast part, especially Isabela, documented na yun in Quirino. So madadagan na rin yung sa North Luzon, but we will update this number. We will sit together with the whole team and update this with you. But the more important thing is, again, we have a challenge of continuous loss of pigs in our population that will have an impact in our pork production and pork supply. And so if you look at the pork supply, again, as of July 14, already in the Philippines, we've already lost 22% of our metric tons. So we've lost already 40,000, 40 metric tons or 40 million kilos of pork. Okay, so yan yung nawala coming from the number of pig that we've lost in our production system. Okay, so nung projection natin in January, mawawalan tayo ng mga 20%. Tama, or probably higher ang realidad. We've lost now around 22 to 25% already of our pork in the industry. And so just as a remaining, while my colleagues will talk to you about lessons in biosecurity, we failed, as discussed shared by the industry input. We failed in controlling the outbreak spread from North Luzon to South Luzon. So it's very important that we learn as Visayas, as students, we learn on why the massive outbreaks continued amidst all the programs that we implemented, and what can we learn, okay? So that yung lessons na yon ay ma-execute natin in other regions, in Mindanao, and again, hopefully in Visayas, as our last bastion of hope for ASF control. So I've shared here some of the causes of the problems. I'm sure the biosecurity presentation of both Doc Angel and Doc Max will discuss this further, but really the influx of viajeros is a big reason. We've discussed it, that we've learned it from China. Actually, we haven't learned it from China because we still, our viajeros freely, without proper disinfection protocol, has penetrated as deep as Bicol and has been one of the causes of the breaks in there. There's a recommendation to do centralized buying and selling. Of course, we do improve our quarantine programs of cleaning and disinfection points with our truck. No? So there was a recommendation to do feed truck disinfection in strategic points. There has to be incentives for reporting. And then with that, para ma-report, kailangan ma-approve natin yung test and cal natin. Kasi syempre, pag nakakapaglabas pa sa ng baboy without being locked down, because negative naman yung mga baboy nila, that will encourage them to report. Okay? And then hopefully, as I've known, babalik na yung support on testing. May funds na tayo ulit sa efficient testing so that it could be a tool for early detection, and more importantly, a tool in the tooth extraction or the test and cal strategy of those who have been infected with ASF. And that, again, it will all help in the transparency of farm reporting. Ano na ngayon yung impact nito sa ating industriya? We'll start with the feeds. The Philippine Association of Feed mill producers or feed millers reported that in 2019 alone, wala pa silang 2020. It's for them to update. We'll ask from them. In 2019 alone, na nagsimula lang tayong mawala yung mga baboy, matamaan yung mga baboy natin in August. 30% na ang nawala sa hog feeds volume daw ng PAFMI. And of that, in Luzon, and then 15% in Visayas, and 10% in Mindanao. Of course, drop in pork consumption at the height of the outbreak. It's always a basic story out of fear. Again, sinabi ko na from the start na hindi ito nakakahawa ng tao, but it is very infectious in pig. So may mga magandang discussion tayo ngayon na from now, it has also become an issue of pork supply and food security. Sa panahon na maraming gutom sa pandemya, maybe let's take a paradigm shift of how we attack ASF meat strategy. 21% na nawala based on the presentation, a minimum of 21 to 25% nang nawala sa ating pork supply coming from those population loss. And ito, hog and pork price are breaking ceilings, okay? Sa ngayon, 195 na in farms in Tarlac and in North Luzon. May balita na in the next weeks, mas tataas pa yan ang ating farm gate prices 200. Anong impact noon sa ating per capita consumption? Anong impact noon sa presyo ng ating karne sa palengke? And its impact on other sources of protein like chicken, of eggs, okay, and even impact on other protein commodities, alternative like rabbits. So how do we prepare as an industry? How do we adjust our strategy as the trends and outlook have changed depending on the flow and impact of ASF into our population? Lastly, the strategy now is really, wala tayong baboy. And the strategy now is really to teach our farmers, just like how we are trying to learn to live with COVID, is that we need to learn with the threats of ASF. And so our campaign now is towards recovery and repopulation. In areas where matagal nang tinamaan ng ASF, ano na yung strategies na masigurado natin na wala nang, kasi habang tumatagal na wala nang baboy in the area, syempre wala nang receptor sites, wala nang target cells, wala nang hosts yung ASF virus na pagkakabuhayan. And so by natural desiccation, namamatay yung virus in the region. And so pag nasigurado natin na wala nang baboy na possible host at matest natin na wala ng virus circulating in the region, it's the right time to consider recovery and repopulation. Kasi nga, wala na tayong makaing baboy sa Pilipinas. Ang mahal-mahal na ng karne. And so, we have to have our checklists of what to ensure before we start recovery and repopulation, because the last thing that would want to happen to our farm is pag bumalik tayo sa paglalaga ng baboy at mamamatay lang din kasi nandun pa rin yung risk ng ASF sa ating region or sa ating area or sa ating farm. And so here are the checklists. I'm not going to discuss it with you today because this will be discussed by our other speakers. But as students and as farmers in the region, it's very important for you to understand this because you have to know what the cause of the outbreak is in the first place. And biosecurity is a basic ingredient to protection against ASF virus. And so all these recovery and repopulation are also ingredients for border control and for protection against ASF. No? So these are the checklists that we can probably discuss with you, like for example in VSU, if you want another session to discuss on this. But for now, at least we have hope as China and as Vietnam has started to recover and to repopulate. There are ways of doing things, but the right way, okay? So hopefully you learned a lot from our story of ASF in the Philippines. If you have questions, please let me know during our live discussion, and please continue to watch the presentation of my other colleagues because it will complete the loop of the recovery and repopulation of our pig population, particularly with right biosecurity and right inter-barangay awareness, going from the barangays to towns, to provinces, and to regions. Kailangan united and solid yung ating strategy to control against ASF. Maraming salamat po, and see you at the Q&A.
Today, with thousands of dedicated colleagues reaching out to customers around the world, Zoetis brings a singular focus on animal health to the quality products, services, and solutions it offers veterinarians and livestock farmers. Because the world depends on animals, those who care for them can depend on us. We're Zoetis. For animals, for health, for you. Today, with thousands of dedicated colleagues reaching out to customers around the world, Zoetis brings a singular focus on animal health to the quality products, services, and solutions it offers veterinarians and livestock farmers. Because the world depends on animals, those who care for them can depend on us. We're Zoetis. For animals, for health, for you. Today, with thousands of dedicated colleagues reaching out to customers around the world, Zoetis brings a singular focus on animal health to the quality products, services, and solutions it offers veterinarians and livestock farmers. Because the world depends on animals, those who care for them can depend on us. We're Zoetis. For animals, for health, for you.
Tonicity PX is the first isotonic protein drink for pigs. Made from all natural ingredients, Tonicity PX is scientifically proven to help your pigs thrive. Use on pigs from 2 days old to provide early hydration and nutrients, reduce pre-weaning mortality, and help pigs cope with stress. The convenient powder formula comes in 11-pound resealable bags and fits in easily to your existing pig management system. Simply mix 1 scoop of PX powder to 1 gallon of water and give 1 pint per liter per day. Your pigs will love the taste. Tonicity PX, a healthy start for your pigs. Smart business for you. Visit tonicity.com for details.
Matagal ba ang paggaling ng sugat ng inyong mga alagang baboy? Ang Topicure ay isang natural wound spray na mabilis na nagpapagaling ng mga sugat ng baboy. Ito ay mayroong pinus oil, eucalyptus oil at citrus deodara na nagsisilbing anti-maggot, fly repellent at antimicrobial sa sugat. Higit sa lahat, ito ay may curcumin oil o luyang dilaw na mabisang solusyon sa pamamaga ng sugat ng baboy. Topicure, the natural wound spray. Para sa malusog at mahusay na paghahayupan, Pork Champ!
Today, with thousands of dedicated colleagues reaching out to customers around the world, Zoetis brings a singular focus on animal health to the quality products, services, and solutions it offers veterinarians and livestock farmers. Because the world depends on animals, those who care for them can depend on us. We're Zoetis. For animals, for health, for you. Today, with thousands of dedicated colleagues reaching out to customers around the world, Zoetis brings a singular focus on animal health to the quality products, services, and solutions it offers veterinarians and livestock farmers. Because the world depends on animals, those who care for them can depend on us. We're Zoetis. For animals, for health, for you.